Hey everybody, welcome into the Beehive. I'm your host, the Bee at LLC, and this is where we stack precious metals like it's pollen and nectar. Our pollen is silver, our nectar is gold, preserving our wealth is honey of old, and like ancient metals, we hold our own. And today we're going to talk a little bit about risk, reward, and safety concerning wealth. So, I'm going to go over a couple different stories here and include some of my own commentary on my thoughts about value and wealth preservation, etc. I'm going to share a screen here. Okay. So, this is a YouTuber, evidently, that is talking about Bitcoin. Rockamos, welcome in. Good to see you. And he talks a little bit about his venture into Bitcoin and what he's doing and why he's stacking Bitcoin. And he goes through a rough spell and he actually loses 2 of his Bitcoin. And he talks a little bit about that. Before I get into that, I want to just go over a couple things about myself and where I'm coming at this from. I come into the investment world from a position that I didn't have any money to start with. I had no good savings and a little bit of credit card debt, and I never really thought about money in my life much at all. And I definitely wasn't good at saving money, didn't think much about it, thought very little about the future of money, not concerned about money at all. And I didn't have a lot of money, but I just didn't care about it or didn't spend time thinking about it. And up until I got into silver and gold and learned about silver and gold, and so I was noticing early on. This was 2018, before 2020, before the whole COVID thing happened. I was of the assumption that there was lots of lies being told and that a lot of deception was going around, and that made me, and this was, I had a wife and a couple kids at this point, and so I get concerned about maintaining a good living standard for them. And this guy that was lost his 2 Bitcoin, he had the same concerns, and so so yeah, I didn't have a big background in money at all. I never really thought about it, but I could tell that there was deception going on. And when I looked at silver and gold, that prompted me to look into the monetary system itself. And when I looked into the monetary system, it lined up with the reality of the deception that was at hand, and how there's a lot of deception in the monetary system. And that's what got me into silver and gold. It wasn't that I really liked money and I wanted to learn how to make more of it. I didn't come at it from a position of greed or, oh, I really want to make a lot of money, or, really concerned about money and always thinking about it. I actually never thought about money and I wasn't concerned about it at all. I came into silver and gold from the assumption that there's lies out there and deception afoot. So that's what got me into silver and gold and looking into the monetary system. And once you start looking into the monetary system, you can find lots of corruption and lies and deception. So that's what made me a stacker, was realizing what was going on in the fiat system, realizing why gold and silver was money to begin with, why there are other monetary systems. How did we get onto a fiat standard? Why did we get onto a fiat standard? And none of this is taught to you in schools like this, at least the way I looked into it. And I mean, to me, this is a very easy concept to understand of true value and real value, and why gold and silver are valuable in the first place, why they've lasted from the beginning of history to now, and why they've been common money throughout history up until now. And so that's how I first got into gold and silver. Again, it was from looking at the deception in the world, which caused me to look into protecting my family. And once I was looking at protecting my family, I also got introduced into silver and gold. And some of the things I heard about it prompted me to look into the monetary system, because again, I was coming at it from a deception angle, that there's a lot of deception in the world. And so then once I started looking into the monetary system, it was just kind of a confirmation of what I was seeing in the world, in the deception realm, in the corruption realm. And so once you figure out why we went on to a fiat system and what a fiat system is and why they would want to take you on a fiat system, that really helps to tie a lot of the angles together. Because I was coming at it from okay, there's deception at hand, and then probably one of the best places to look would be the monetary system, because so much of our corruption comes from the money system, especially the fiat money system. And so that really the key to all of so many of the problems today is an understanding of the monetary system. And there's a quote by a famous guy in the past. I can't think if it was a president or who he was, but he says that not 1 in a million understands inflation in the monetary system. So therefore, they can get away with defrauding everyone and not knowing, understanding what's happening or where the fraud is coming from. So there's some great sources on this stuff. If you guys don't know, in fact, I'll look this up just to show you guys the reference. So this is gold silver. If you go to gold silver, Mike Maloney, This is his episodes he put out on the hidden secrets of money. I think it's like 12 episodes or something like that, and it goes over the basics of the fiat system and gives you all the details, the basic understanding of the monetary system. And that really helped me to understand some of the things that were going on. So if you guys haven't watched The Hidden Secrets of Money by Mike Maloney, it's an animated kind of walkthrough of the monetary system, and very good information in there. But getting back to the story at hand, so looking into the monetary system, you see all these lies, and then you understand, okay, the system is being propagated by printing out of thin air, or someone has a magic money hat, and anytime they want to create money, they create it. And that's how it starts at first. Like when we first went off the gold standard, the fact the president says when he closes the gold window, and then he says, but don't worry, trading partners, we're going to be good, honest, forward trading partners, and we're going to keep honest books. And so for a while, the inflation you don't see very bad or very much. It's not until the government wants something extra that they don't have money for, and they start printing for it. And then once you get that printing system underway and that new gush of fiat money in the system, it raises the standard of level of money and everyone getting paid. So everyone wants a raise because the cost of the goods go up. And so now the standard gets up that, okay, we need X amount more of this fiat currency to provide for the amount that we just put in. The interest starts eating on the interest, and you just have to, in this, because it is a Ponzi scheme, and so you have to just keep buying into it with more debt. And that's what we're doing. We just keep printing more money, and so now we're to a point where we have to keep printing money. And so there is no quick way out of this. And I want to show you, let me jump over here. I was going to save this to last, but it kind of fits in so well right here. Is we're over here at Sprott Money. This was just put out, and so that I would go watch the whole episode. It's really good. But right here, I want to play at the end. What he says right here is really good.
To produce gold as quickly as possible and start buying it from them and start restocking Bank of Canada. And I don't think that's going to happen, because the government has no interest at all in backing a currency. They want the currency to fail. And that's the history playbook right there. They're in debt beyond their eyeballs. There's no way that we can repay it. So now it's foot to the floor to accelerate the dollar to nothing. And when our dollar becomes nothing, therefore the debt becomes nothing. And it's the playbook of every fiat currency in history that ever existed.
Yeah, and so if they seized everybody's assets and all their money and put it in a pile, it wouldn't be enough to pay back our debt. And so we just can't pay it back. And like he's saying, at this point, once you get to a certain level in a fiat system, you want to inflate it. So like you have, whatever you feel about our president right now, he's openly calling for lower rates. He wants the Fed to lower rates, and he's also calling for a lower dollar, a less value. Well, both of those things are the same. That's inflation. That's your dollar being worth less, having less buying power. And like he was just pointing out here, you want to, once you reach this level of no turning back, which we are well past, you want to inflate the system away. Your goal now is to inflate the system away because you have so much debt that you can't pay it back. The only way you can pay it back is by paying it back in dollars that have less value. So it becomes the goal where you just, now it's kind of a something that they have to do, otherwise they would default, and it's going to look worse on you if you default than if this gradual process that becomes exponential and faster, which I think we're getting into. But unless you can just pay it back with dollars that have no value, and then you've actually covered your obligation. You've done what you said you were going to do, right? Through a deceptive way, but you at least you're not paying back your debt, right? At least you're not defaulting. We already kind of did when we closed the gold window, but now that we've been milking the system for so long and extracting the wealth of the average citizen for so long, and our debts to the world have gotten so big through this system, it becomes what they want to do. And that's why you openly hear like Trump wanting a weaker dollar. And I don't know that anyone, no one understands. The sad part is very few people understand the monetary system and what's going on in the monetary system. So when you start calling for, when Trump is saying, I want a weaker dollar, people don't understand that he's saying, I want you to have less buying power. Or a lot of the people don't. And that's a big problem when you, again, that's why I was kind of saying I didn't come at this from a I want to get rich standpoint. That wasn't the angle I came into this at. I came into it from an angle of, boy, there's a lot of dishonesty in the world. And when sniffing around for the dishonesty, the monetary system really stunk. And that's where you end up. And you're like, oh, wow, look at all of the corruption that only gets bigger the more you devalue the dollar. So, and this is to a point we're at, and so very few people understand this. But this brings me back to our guy that I started with here, our Bitcoin guy here who lost 2 Bitcoin. So we're gonna talk about it from that value point, because I don't have a lot of money. So you should also know that all of these things and your approach to value preservation, there's different angles from where you start and the amount of money that you start with. So we're going to start with a couple Bitcoin here that we lost and talk about that. Let me say hi to Southeast Stacker. Welcome in. Good to see you, Southeast. Liberty Bleeds Silver, Space Miner. Thanks for stopping in, guys. And so yeah, so this guy, this poor guy who's telling us his journey and him getting into Bitcoin, and I don't want to come at Bitcoiners in a bad way per se in this video, just talking about it. I think the ideas or the understanding a lot of the Bitcoiners have, the gold and silver stackers have, in the same way that we, a lot of the Bitcoiners understand that, our present fiat dollar is being inflated and it's losing its purchasing power. And so I think we have that in common. But there are some differences that I want to go over. For one thing, there's this guy talks about how once he learned about Bitcoin, he wanted to get completely involved and do the mining, and you know, he talks about he was going to have his house paid off by the end of 2024 from Bitcoin and his ideas, and you know, but he ends up getting kind of head over heels. He starts mining, and then he's like, how can he make more off of it? And he tries to pull yield off of it. You know, definitely go watch his video and feel his struggle. In the end, I think when he went to try to get yield off the Bitcoin that he had, he ended up giving it to an exchange or something, and within a few days it was just gone. And what's crazy about that is you go down in the comments, and it's just one comment after the other of, yes, I had the same problem happen to me. I lost my Bitcoin from an exchange, or I lost my, you know, my keys. I can't find my keys, or it got, you know, all these different ways of people losing their Bitcoin or losing their phrase or what have you. So it's not an uncommon thing. And I'm like, for me, I have way too many passwords that I can't remember, and you know, I just, it would scare me to death to try to come up with a code and remember it and worry that I wasn't going to lose it, and lots of things. But the big thing for me is that, again, you don't want to only be after money in life, right? Like, I didn't come at this with a greed aspect or idea. I was looking to find truth, and I was looking to secure my family and preserve my family's well-being. And so if you come at it with that attitude instead of, oh, any way I can go to get rich, you're going to take a lot of different avenues. And that's something like, you know, in the description here, I talk about what does the spirit have to do with any of this. And for me, you know, that's what got me into Silver at Gold, again, was looking at, you know, all the evil in the world and the lies and the deception and the corruption, and wondering how is it getting to be so bad, and then looking into the monetary system and seeing that, oh, there's a correlation there. You know, there's more and more corruption because someone has a magic wand and a hat that they can just make money come out of thin air. And when you get, and now that the system's so far that you have to come up with excuses to keep printing because you have to keep it going because of the pyramid scheme that it is, then, you know, you end up in war. You're just creating reasons to print more money, and war is a great reason to print more money. And so, you know, you can't build off corruption and expect to get a solid yield from it, a solid reward from it. And so I think it makes a difference on how you're looking at things, how you're coming at it. What's your idea of what you're doing? What's your end goal? You know, I've never come at it with I got to get rich attitude, but I think that really falls into Bitcoiners avenue, where they learn about the, you know, the bad of the system, and that's a sad thing to learn about. But then it's, oh, you're going to get rich really quick with Bitcoin, and I think that creates some issues that you want to be careful about. I suppose some people here. Sean's Precious Bullion, welcome in, good to see you. 888 the Great. I suppose in fact, I know some people would consider me a pumper in silver and gold, especially silver, because I really like it. I think it's what what you should have some of. I think it is a good idea to get some. So I am kind of a pumper on it. And I do think that it will go up in value. And it's not that the silver is gaining in so much value, although I think that is going to happen. It's that it's the paper fiat, this magic hat money that we're all forced to use, that is being printed way too much and losing its buying power. So that's why I remain in silvers, because it's reality, it's true money. And so if you look into our history and all of the different empires that have risen and fallen, the one thing that remains constant throughout all of our history is gold and silver maintains value. Now, when we're going into this hyperinflation area like we are now, is where it gains the most. And so why some people might call me a pumper is because I talk about, this could go to triple digits. 1 ounce silver could go to triple digits, up to $100, and not be a problem. Because if you inflation adjust the all-time high to today's inflation adjusted price, you'd have over $200 an ounce. And it's already done that. So it's not hard to imagine it being able to do it again. But I think people don't understand that system, and therefore they confuse what you're saying, kind of get upset about it. But again, this gets into risk and reward, and how much risk are you willing to enter into for a higher reward? And so when you're looking at investing or preserving your wealth, you want to be making your decisions yourself, if at all possible, because you understand your situation the best out of anyone else. And so that's why it's very valuable to learn about the monetary system itself, because once you understand, how our fiat monetary system is working and why we got off the gold standard, it really helps to understand a lot of the other variables that would help you make your decision in investing. B. Taylor, welcome in. Good to see you. So I don't have very much money. When I started, I had none. I was in debt. And I started stacking, an ounce at a time, until I had stacked enough that I had some value, and I had enough that I could pay off my debt and still have money left over. Because, as I said before, I never had money before this, and I don't care about I'm not looking to get really rich. So I just went paycheck to paycheck, and I, ate what I needed to and spent the rest on whatever useless thing you spend it on. And it goes away, it disappears. Now, you can get a vehicle and a house. There's a few other good things, but if you're just spending it on fun or entertainment or things that break in a few weeks, like you're kind of taught to in our society, then you're continually being robbed of your future wealth without knowing it. Even your 401ks are even though they may be growing nominally, if you look at the inflation rate, they're probably dropping pretty hard. So people don't realize that they're being robbed. Now, a Bitcoiner starts to learn the system, and that's why they like Bitcoin so much, right? Is because it's finite. You hear them, that's one of their first things that they understand about, it can't be printed out of nowhere, like the dollar, which is causing all their pain. So they fall in love with this idea, and that's great. The problem is that there's the first few people in it did get kind of rich, or did get really rich, depending on the person. But that's those few people who got in early and, and have a lot of Bitcoin and just held on to it. And now they're very wealthy. But most people, when they enter into it, are kind of entering into it at the top, and they're believing in these I'm going to get rich quick ideas. And that's kind of a problem, just as well as I kind of lump that in with the same mindset of I'm going to do anything to get rich, which I have never been that way. I don't want to be that way because I see all kinds of problems in living that way, where when you put getting rich or money as like the only thing of importance to you, and you're willing to get it no matter what, and I don't care how I get it as long as I get it, that's not a life that I think is, that I've seen from anyone who's tried that, is not a healthy life. It's not a happy life. They're never satisfied, and it's not something that sits well if you earn it in deceptive ways. And so that's why, for me, I guess it's easy to look at gold, silver, the monetary system, Bitcoin, and say, okay, risk, reward, safety, and freedom of the mind. Or what I consider more important to me is the spiritual. To me, I consider it, depends on how you look at things, but I like to consider that I have a spiritual basket, just as I have this physical basket that I stack silver and gold with. I have a spiritual basket, and I put more value in my spiritual basket than I do into my metals basket. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that I think that it's better to have good, what some would call karma, coming your way. Some would say what you reap, you sow. But however you look at that fundamental self-evident thing, is that it's much better to have a protection around you in the karma aspect, the spiritual aspect. You want to have good vibes coming your way. You don't want to have a bunch of bad vibes coming your way. And how do you get bad vibes? Well, from my and this is just my personal understanding of life that I have found to be true. When you do bad things, or things that hurt others, or you steal, or you cheat, or it may reward you quickly, but in the long run, it applies too much negative to you. You murder someone you hate, you might be happy for a minute, but then the reality of spending the rest of your life in jail or running from the law, you're like, or all the bad thing, the hate that you get from that family, of the person that you get, like, a lot of bad things come from doing something bad, or for gaining something you desire quickly and disregarding the bad consequences that might come down the road. And I think a lot of people have been taught that, there is no spiritual reality, and maybe I should be using a different word, but for me, that is very much true. In that if you are helping others, and you're trying to do good for others, and you're you're benefiting others, this helps for you to be benefited down the road. It's like applying a positive credit to your system. And I think that I have found that that's a more important basket to keep loaded, to keep stacking in, to keep doing those things that help others, that are not going to be able to bring any negative consequences back to you. And so if all you're thinking about is, I'm going to do anything I can to get rich, doesn't matter how I get rich, I just am going to get rich, look out, get out of my way, that's all I care about. Well, then you should invest in defense stocks, because, as this fake magic money hat currency is, as the global reserve keeps getting inflated away, then you're gonna fade away with that system unless you fight back, or at least hold your own. You're in a system that has been corrupted, being more corrupted, and you only have X ways to handle it. You can't just be an innocent bystander of it, because we're all in it automatically. And it being the global standard, our fiat currency being the global standard, affects the whole world. And now that our fiat currency is at this end point where it's going to start really taking off in the loss of purchasing power, there's going to be all these different types of ideas or ways to make money, preserve value, and all these things. So again, if you have I'm going to do anything to get rich, you can invest in defense stocks, because as that inflationary system happens, war breaks out. War becomes the go-to, because you have to come up with a reason to print more money. Well, and war is a great one, and it gets people behind it. It gets people cheering it on. Therefore, print more and cheer it on. It's a good way to keep that inflationary system going, and the people cheering for it without them realizing they're the ones being robbed at that time. So, and there's going to be lots of different avenues and ideas about what the best way to do this is. And that's where you have this Bitcoin issue come in. And so one thing for me about seeing this is, again, I seen that this monetary system was a problem, and it was causing lots of lies and deception to come into fruition. And then you get to looking at Bitcoin, and you're looking at our monetary system, and Bitcoin came out right as the great financial crisis happened. And so, for me, looking at the system and knowing that this is going to take place, and Bitcoin popping up out of the woodwork just at the right time, is a little too non-coincidental for me, I guess. And so this again comes into those bracketry, risk, reward, safety, and the spirit of life, which is what hopefully is the most important thing to people, is living a good life and the value you get from life. It shouldn't be all about getting rich, because there's a lot of people that I see out here in the gold and silver and the crypto, that all they care about is getting rich. And I want to make sure that I point out that that's not my goal. I'm not against getting rich, but I'm not looking to get rich, and to get rich by any means possible. It doesn't matter if I'm hurting people, or I don't want even though I know that if I invested in defense stocks right now, weapon stocks, that's gonna go up in value right now because more wars are gonna break out. And I know that's gonna happen, and I know those stocks are gonna go up. So why, if it's a reality that it's gonna happen, well, why not just get in on it? Because you know it's gonna go up and you're looking to make money. Well, I don't want personally, and you guys, everybody has their own foundation that they have to stand on. And so everyone has to, or should, to the best of their ability, make up their own mind to float their own boat, because that's who you have as your best go-to, is your understanding of where you're at. But I don't want to get rich despite my spiritual basket. I don't want to have bad karma coming just because, so that I can have physical gains in this and in my reality right now. So like with defense stocks, you could definitely invest in defense stocks, but I would feel bad knowing that, oh, I just got really rich. I'm smiling now because war is breaking out. Like, I don't want that kind of guilt trip on myself. That's not where I want to think that my money value has came from. Even though you might not be the one that's signing off on it, that's just in my investment strategy. I put more in my spiritual basket than I do in my physical stack. So, even though I could get rich off of the defense stocks, I'm not going to put my money in defense stocks to get wealthy of, because I believe it will take out of my spiritual basket. And then I have more, less of a buffer to help me out of bad times, because I'm putting all my trust in the wealth that it don't matter who I hurt, just as long as I become more. I don't do that. I can't do that. I put way more into I would rather be poorer but have a good conscience in helping others than, despite everyone else, I'm going to get rich. I can't. I hope I'm never able to get to that point mentally, because I think that those things are true. And just like you have a positive and negative debt in this reality, monetarily speaking, I think that there's a positive and negative in your spiritual basket speaking. And I would much rather remain on the positive, spiritually speaking, than end up in the negative and be rich, with physical goods in this way. So that's things that need to be put on the table and weighed out between, preserving your wealth, making money, increasing that value. And that's, for me, a big hesitation on the Bitcoin. Now, a big temptation, in fact, to me, what I call a shiny baited hook, is Bitcoin, because that's what's spouted along with it, is that, oh, you're going to get rich quick if you just buy a little bit of Bitcoin. In fact, this guy who I have on screen here, again, I'm not trying to hound on the guy, go subscribe to him. He gives a heartfelt, he's trying to help people probably too in his own way. But just after he loses his to Bitcoin now, he's going to really work hard to try to get some more Bitcoin so that within another year he can pay off his house. And that I just, knowing what I know about the monetary system, I like where he's coming from in not letting the system get him down. But again, you also want to be a little bit wary that you don't get carried away with, oh, I got to get rich. And that's kind of why I even started my channel, because this even though you might want to stay out of, thinking about money, like before, that's how I used to not think about money at all. That's what I was saying. My base comes from not having money, and I didn't come at this at a get rich quick idea. It's that I seen the corruption and lies in the world, and that led me to the monetary system, which indeed showed me where lots of the corruption is coming from, and that the system can't be stopped. And that, in fact, at this point, since it's so far gone, just like we've seen over here on that Sprott video, is that the government at this point wants to devalue the dollar because they can't pay back the debt no matter what. So at this point, they have to pay the debt back, but with a less value dollar. So they just print up the money out of thin air and pay their debts, and then they're free and clear of that. But it has no value to the person they paid it to. So it's in a sense, they're not defaulting in that way, but they're defaulting in another way. And that's just understanding the government side of it, is they're going to print their way out of this. There is no other way out of it. But as a citizenry, or as the people of a country, you're under that monetary system. In fact, us being the global reserve, again, brings so much of the world into this as well. But so as an average people, we can't escape the pressure that's being put on us daily. And it's just slowly, they're putting more and more weight on us, and that it's going to increase and increase. So if you don't start stacking something of real value that is not just valuable because someone says it's valuable because the commodity itself has value. It has, as people call it, intrinsic value. There's value within the element itself. Because the dollar that we're using right now that is able to carry that value to give us groceries and to feed our family is soon going away. And so that's why, moving into something that's going to hold your purchasing power is so important, because even if you don't, like me, like to think about money, it's not, it wasn't important to me at all until I realized, oh, that's where all this corruption is coming from. That, for me, this is honesty right here. This is reality. This is true value. This is not defrauding someone to, obtain your wealth. This is honest, good money. And it's their system that is corrupt. It's them that's lying to rob everyone of their wealth. So, you can't escape the world. I can't escape this reality of being under the fiat currency that I'm under. I'm under that, and there's no getting out of it. So you have a certain amount of options, but that's why you always want to, what's your risk, what's your reward, and what's the safety level of this for my family's best life lived. And that's why I come down to silver so much, because I think there's actually a little bit more risk in silver, but I think that there's more reward in silver than gold. And since I have so little value, I'm going into that greater risk but higher reward metal more than I am the less risk, less reward, more safety metal, gold, than silver. Now, if I was very wealthy, if I already had a bunch of money and value, and I would probably take a large sum of my fiat currency and put it into gold. And I probably wouldn't put it into a large portion. I would put into gold, because there's more safety there. It's more sure. It's less volatile, less risk attached. So if you're very, very wealthy, you might want to move into gold more or less than anything else. But, either way, silver is much less risk than Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin, with that more risk, is also bringing you the possibility of more reward. But I don't do Bitcoin for a whole different reason than the risk reward. I don't do it on a bigger picture basis of morality and slavery and freedom, and a lot of people wouldn't have this belief, and nor would I want to apply my belief on you. You need to come up with your own understanding of these things and what's going on, and decide for yourself. I personally think I don't want to put my hard-earned value and trust and family's trust of their life preservation and happiness in something that I have to remember a password to log on to the system that I can allow to put in all my codes to get to it. Not only are you having that risk reward, but you're turning over your, in my opinion, freedom. You're turning over your trust to at least the net, the internet, the online web. You have to at least agree that there's that level of risk there when you're doing that. But I take it to a whole nother level of slavery. I don't want to put my wealth value online because I'm immediately enslaved to whatever code they put up. I turn my computer on, it says, oh, to access the internet today, you got to scan your retina and you got to put in this new code and you got to tell me this, and this, and do this, and that. And if you have all your value tied up on there, you're going to jump through whatever hoop they put out in front of you to get there. And I don't want to have my instinctual free will trust value being able to be leveraged away from me in that way. To me, that's an enslavement mechanism in itself, let alone it's called a blockchain system that, like there's so many things about this. In fact, let's continue on. So this guy lost 2 Bitcoin value. So if we're at like $100,000, he lost $200,000. And the way he made it sound is he wasn't necessarily rich to begin with like me. And so that's a lot of money for him. Now he's worried about, his house and his family and this and that. So he put a lot of work and a lot of effort into gaining those 2 Bitcoin. Now to have lost them all, he turned his keys over to some network to earn a yield off of his Bitcoin, and he lost it all. And now he's worried. Now he's got to make, I think he said grind really hard so that he can get back into Bitcoin to pay off his house in a year. So now he's went from that preserve wealth mentality to oh crap, I got to beat the house on a whole new level down. I got to double down. I got to get rich even faster than I got rich before. And like, this is like a compounding mentality that you don't want to get leveraged under, right? And so, luckily for me, I've never been a money guy where all I care about is making a lot of money. So I think this helps me to like see these different incentives that get people going. And I see some of the warning systems that can be had in only wanting to get rich and not caring how you get there and how that can cascade, causing a bunch of problems. But to me, I even take that all the way back to the base level, which is again spiritual, where you need to be putting more value in your spiritual basket. Therefore, you don't even get in that negative situation where all you're caring about is your physical wealth in that type of form. Because why do you want Why do you want your physical wealth anyway while we're alive? You want more money because that allows your family to live in a better means than they would otherwise, right? At least that's my idea behind it. Is I want my family to be able to afford to eat and to drink and to live and to, continue down life without having lots of pain. So, that's kind of, I guess, why I felt I needed to probably start a channel and talk a little bit about it, is because there is a problem that is happening, that your fiat money is being attacked. It's an attack system in itself. You just don't understand it. And so, like, an easy example on that is a silver dime. A dime that was made before 1964 was 90% silver. And that silver dime, if you would have held on to it from before 1964 up to today, you could have bought a gallon of gas in 1964 with that dime, and you could buy a gallon of gas today with the value of that dime, which is like $3.50 or whatever it is for a gallon of gas today. So that's why they took the silver out of our money and the gold out of our money, is because it was becoming too valuable. And so all of that time since we've left the gold and silver standard, your paper currency is losing its purchasing power. And the closer you get to the end of the life of that currency, the faster it's going to start happening. You're going to lose more and more and more, faster and faster. And so you can't just sit back and think, oh, well, I don't care about the money, or I don't care about the money system, because it's at this point, it's a weapon against you. You're losing. A lot of people have 2-3 jobs and they're about ready to get their 4th job and go on to their 5th job, and that's just going to keep having to go up, because you're getting paid in a less and less valuable payment. And that's why, if you would get into something that's going to preserve its value, you wouldn't have to continue on that hamster wheel where you got to get more and more jobs to preserve your level of wealth. So, and the problem with the system that we're going into, the people that there's going to be lots of scams coming out. And for me, Bitcoin is one of these. Even though so many people see Bitcoin as a way out, an answer to this fiat money problem, and it is in a sense, in ways, but to me, it's a pre-planned trap. You have to account for that possibility. And in fact, this guy who I have up on screen now, this is another podcast that I watched that AI is trying to feed me through their algorithms. And Bitcoin stuff's always popping up because I'm always talking about the monetary system, and so every once in a while I'll watch one of these. And this one was all about who is Satoshi Nakamoto, this guy asks. And let me make sure I'm on the right. Yep. And he goes on to answer, some people think it might be the CIA. And he goes on to say, yeah, it definitely wasn't made by one person. It very possibly could have been the CIA. But his argument is, you got to look at the dollar, because it doesn't. You got to get out of the dollar anyway. Therefore, Bitcoin's so much better. And he's kind of admitting that it could have been the CIA. But he goes on kind of just to say, in fact, at the end here, that it says, does it even matter who created Bitcoin? And he goes on to say, kind of, no, it doesn't even matter who created Bitcoin, even though he's kind of admitting it probably was the CIA. And I disagree with that. I think there definitely could be a backdoor. There probably is a backdoor if the CIA created it, and I do think that there's a high probability that it was the CIA or some inside group like that. Pretty much everybody agrees that most likely was not just one guy. So, and he goes on to say, well, even if it was created by the CIA, it's so good that, you should be a part of it. And, if you had no other understanding of any other way to get out of the situation that the people are in with the devaluation of their dollar, you might want to stay in that, especially with the lure of, oh, you're going to get rich, which is always the thing with Bitcoin is, oh, you're going to get rich overnight with it. And going back to that risk, reward, safety, grid, you always want to weigh those things out. But, for me, the Bitcoin is not something for me. Even if I took, even on a risk reward level, I would be out of it, at least until I had a certain amount of value and safety in gold and silver put away. I would, if I had enough gold and silver that I was somewhat satisfied, and some of the other metals, to give myself some diversification among the metals. Once I had enough of those, I might consider going into Bitcoin, because there is such a possibility of making a lot of value out of nowhere, right? Like, you can get rich off of Bitcoin. That's a thing. I'm not trying to take that away from Bitcoin. I do believe that about Bitcoin. You can get rich from, out of nowhere there. But again, I'm not going to do it personally. I'm not against anyone who does get into it. Everybody has to make up their own mind for where they're at and what they need to accomplish and what their view is on the world. But for me, I can't do it, not only from the risk side, but for me, it's more I'm a very freedom oriented person. I like freedom of the mind, freedom of thought. I don't want to have someone else controlling me in ways that I don't want. And, I feel like I have too much control over me now, just accessing some of the things I try to access on my computer or my bank or this and that. And let alone would I want to tie all of my wealth up on something that can be taken away by the internet itself, let alone the holder of my keys or whatever with Bitcoin or the exchange or and so that was what was amazing too about that first video of the first Bitcoiner that lost his 2 Bitcoin. There must be 200 comments below his video of, oh, the same thing happened to me. I lost a Bitcoin and a half, or I lost 10 Bitcoin, or just on and on and on. All these people losing all this Bitcoin. Which would not, that would drive me nutso. And so then this guy that I'm showing now, he kind of just doesn't seem to care that it might be created by CIA because it's just such a good product. And then this next video that AI brought to me that I couldn't help but watch a little bit was from this Bitcoin University. And again, you guys can go check these channels out, watch these videos for yourself. There's actually a lot of good information on these. They point out lots of problems with the fiat system, of course, that we agree with. But again, in this video, pro-Israel hackers stealing Bitcoin, he talks about all the different Bitcoin that's been stolen by Israel. And, again, it's like they're, especially nowadays, you got to watch for double speak from people. It's like they're double-minded, and, it's not a good thing to be double-minded or thinking 2 different things that contradict itself at the same time. And, that seems to happen in Bitcoin. Like he's okay with it because it's this pro-Israel, and it was good things that were happening because of, bad criminal underbelly of Iran. And so, but if your Bitcoin can get stolen from you, then, hacked from you. And he talks about them probably even having the technology to have your cold key information, your cold wallet, being able to steal out of your cold wallet. And I've always thought that, but I think they're gonna keep that on the down low until necessary. But again, I wouldn't do it for the enslavement part that would bother me, let alone the risk, and let alone, this having to spring up at the end of the fiat system, where this is going to be such a, it's like a baited hook basically for people. It's a way to keep people out of true value that they would normally otherwise go to, and give them a leverage against what's happening. So, for me, the Bitcoin is just, it's not good on so many levels for me personally. The only thing that I see good about Bitcoin is that if you got in at the right time and you get out at the right time, and you would take that value that you earned from it and put it into metals, I would say that would be a very good move. But I personally can't do that because of my moral stance. I just couldn't. Again, it's like, for me, investing in something that I know is people are getting hurt from. Not that, to each their own, but I just am not going to invest in the defense stocks for that reason. I don't want to have my value coming from something like that. To me, that's what's great about, gold and silver, is that there's no counterparty risk, and you're being honest about, purchasing it. You're being honest about holding it. You're not the one being deceptive. And so, I think that's the way to go. But moreover, overall is understanding the monetary system itself, because that's the big game. That's the big hurt that's going to come down on everyone, and it's going to start happening faster if people don't kind of figure that out. And there's the term golden handcuffs, which is something that that has happened to me, in that I happened to get into a house back right down at the end of 2012, beginning of 13, where that was kind of the bottom of the housing dip. And so I bought in at a time that, my house is tripled in value, and I had a low interest rate when I got in. So I have such a good deal on my house, it would be great for me to sell. Like, if I had another place to live, I could sell my house. I would have quadrupled my money, and then I could put that into gold and silver before it goes up even more. And that would be a great thing to do. But I don't have somewhere else to take my family to live. So I would have to buy another house, so as the housing market is over, it's in a bubble right now, I'm not really gaining much by doing that. So that's what they mean by having golden handcuffs on. Well, you're handcuffed to your property. It's, even though you have a lot of equity there, you can't realize it, because then you've lost your value. Now you have nowhere to stay, and you need a house, and so that's kind of this golden handcuff idea, where they have me locked into my house and I have nowhere to go because I don't want to move out of that equity. And that's, again, if your equity is online and on the computer and on a web and on someone, you're given all of those checkpoints and authority to someone else, who now you have to submit to and jump through all their hoops to get to. And it's a lot of scary risk, let alone if you're, freedom minded as I am, or don't like to be controlled in those ways. So, yeah, those were some things I wanted to point out. And yeah, oh, and then this video by Sprott that was just made 7 hours ago. Go check it out. Sprott Money. They're talking about inflation, dollar decline, and global conflict. And he really lays it out here. He's saying things that I've said quite a bit on my channel, but he is credible. So go check him out. He talks about at this point, the government wants to take the value of your dollar away. For them, it's best to do that at this point, and that's why Trump is calling for a lower dollar, a lesser value dollar, and for the Fed to cut rates. All those things make inflation go up, makes your dollar worth less. And so that's going to be the game. That's going to be what's going to continue to happen. And there's going to be lots of these baited hooks that might have a lot of reward, but the risks and the lack of safety that accompanies those is what I would warn about. You don't want to learn this about the money system and then get a craving that all you care about is getting rich suddenly, because that leads to lots of problems, right? Like, money should never be the most important thing on your chart of happiness or the spirit of life, because that's what we're experiencing is life. And I want to do the best I can for my family. And so being rich is not my goal, but making a life that's livable without a ton of pain, is my goal for to provide for my family without not being able to provide for them. And you can't think of it as we were taught in school as like just it's a zero-sum game, and you just got to get a job and go to school, get a job, and just pay your bills, and that's all there is to it. That is, they left a huge part of the game out, which is the monetary system, which is a Ponzi scheme, which has to keep inflating itself away or collapse. Therefore, it will inflate away, especially at this point. We're too far gone. We have to keep inflating it away. So it's not a zero-sum game. You do need to find a way to stabilize your wealth income, the value that you have. At least start preserving at the level you're at. If you're at an okay level now, great, because you can probably remain that way if you start taking steps now to preserve that wealth preservation, just by getting into real things. And again, be careful about promises of getting rich quick. And there's going to be all kinds of schemes that come out, because people are going to start looking at value. They're going to start looking at their money. They're going to start thinking of other options. So people are going to come up with all kinds of cool, crazy stories that, just give me your money, like this first guy did with his Bitcoin, where he had a couple Bitcoin and he ended up losing them because he was looking of ways to make even more money off of it. And he's like, well, how do I get yield off my Bitcoin? And he ends up losing it all. And so and another thing is, like, he sets out a new goal for himself, a new lofty high goal, where like in a year he's going to work really hard and get back into Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin is going to go up a lot in value and it's going to pay off his house. For me, don't do that. Don't set yourself up with some high lofty, I'm going to be rich by X time, or I'm going to have this huge dollar amount by this time, or my investment's got to hit here by this time, and it's some outrageous. You're just setting yourself up to fail, and then even to scheme harder on trying to get there, and maybe do things that you wouldn't otherwise do if you weren't in such a pressurized point to do that. I just think that that's not, be content with what you have, but be prudent about it, and to me, that's more the way that, at least that's the way I'm approaching it. But it was never about, I'm not, for me, I don't have to get rich. It's not something that is the end game for me. So I'm not all worried about it. I'm just slowly preserving more and more wealth so that my family is more secure. And that's good for me. And I wouldn't even necessarily I wouldn't have started if I would have figured this out and all of the people weren't under the same loss of currency power and it was just a level sum game, I would just start stacking for myself quietly and would never start at a channel and set a peep about it. It's just simply that this isn't a zero sum game like they're trying to make you think. And you are going to get hurt by this if you don't pay attention to what's going on, especially depending on where you're at on the value scale already. If you're very, very rich and you have a bunch of yachts, well, then you probably don't need to be listening to me. But if it's all valued on paper and you don't have anything real, then you should definitely be worried about it. But anyway. So sorry let me look at the chat here. I've just been rambling. I wanted to get some of that stuff off of my chest. See who we got in here. Yeah, exactly. Space Miner. When you ask somebody when they want money and they don't even know like what they want, it's just to get there. And it's like, well, you're never gonna get there if there's no there. Like, yeah, you should, for me, and luckily I've never been that way. Again, that's where I'm coming from. I didn't come at this that I'm going to get rich quick or get rich at all. It was that I was looking to live an honest, upright life, and there's corruption all around. And it's like, how do I not become part of this corruption problem? And that's what led me to showing me the corruption within the monetary system. And once you understand that, then you can just start preserving your wealth and stay out, start protecting yourself from that corrupt system. Yeah, they're not going to teach silver and gold stacking in school for reason. And B. Taylor, that's a great point. And I want to touch on that a little bit, is that points out a bigger game at hand. And it's a very true statement. And it's not us being pessimistic or trying to find the bad in things. It's that it's quite obvious and in our face at this point. Especially, looking at the monetary system, looking at our schooling system and what has happened to it. This has been a planned, for me, it looks like it's been a planned dumbing down, a planned making you less wealthy. These were things that it was not about empowering you. It was about depowering you and keeping the power with them. And not that I'm looking for all the power and we need to switch this all around. It's just, for me, again, all of this would be changed if we would care more about our spiritual basket, our basket of doing good for, our loved ones, those around us, even loving our enemy, and I think a lot of people misunderstand that and try to make that into something it's not. And I think just what it means is, that the person who doesn't have goodness in their life is going to have these attributes that, they're going to be your enemy. And that's why they're your enemy, is because they don't have those good attributes within them. And that's why if they had the good attributes in them, then they wouldn't be your enemy. And that's why we're supposed to love even, right? To show those good attributes so that they can have those attributes, so that the fighting stops. And that's kind of, we're going into these wars from the monetary system and hoorah, without even looking at what's truly the underbelly of this system. And we have to come up with continual wars at the level of debasement to our currency at this point, that we're going to make up stuff to show that we're at war, to give us an excuse to print. And so I think that that's kind of the bigger game at play, B. Taylor, and that we need to wake up to it and understand that they want us warring against each other for whatever stupid reason, but that's to keep us so that we don't understand the monetary system, and that we don't know why we're being dumbed down in school, and that we do put all of our freedoms and trust into someone who's trying to take it away from us without knowing what's happening. And so if we would ourselves make ourselves better, if we take the beam out of our own eye before we try to take the sticker out of someone else's eye, then these things become self-evident. They become easy. And then all of those things fall, like those overwhelming problems that are problems for us, go away if we were all better people ourselves. And I know that's just an easy ask, but that's kind of the thing, is I think we need to be better ourselves, right? Like, that's where it's going to happen. And it doesn't come from being rich. Rich isn't going to... Computer's trying to shut me down here. Rich isn't going to fix your problems of what's going on. All right, my computer's going to shut me down here. Something bad is happening. Your system has run out of application memory. Close down. So, okay, let me close this down. This down. Yeah, okay, guys. Well, so my computer's acting up on me here a bit, so I might have to... Let me try one thing here, and if I lose you all, thanks for hanging out. If this doesn't disconnect us, then hold tight. Okay, am I back? I think I might be back. Okay, let me look through a couple more comments here. I had somebody that might be going to jump online with me here, but I'm not sure. They were busy and they were going to try to make it over, but I'm not sure if they will get here before I shut down, but possibly we might be having someone join us here shortly. Yeah, and so 888 says financial advisors won't mention gold or silver either. No, and I want to mention a few things about. Mention a few things about that. So they don't mention, financial advisors don't mention gold and silver very often to their clients. For one, because they don't make any money off of it. And and another reason why gold and silver always sell off, like when the market goes down, the reason gold and silver goes down with everything else and scares everybody out of the metals, there's a few reasons for it, but when like the stock market starts to fall, so will gold and silver. And people will say, well, I thought you said gold and silver was a hedge against a falling stock market or whatever is falling. And it is, except they came up with a handy little method where gold and silver in the paper contracts are more liquid than any other paper on the market. So when the stock market starts going down and people who have invested into the stock market start getting margin calls on their stocks, meaning they have to come up with money to cover their margins, they will have to come up with that money by whatever means necessary right away. And so they'll look at what their portfolio and say, okay, how do I come up with this money? Well, all of the other paper have like 3 or 4 day holds on the sale of them. So if you sell something, then you have to wait 3 or 4 days before you can get that cash and cover your margin. Whereas with the paper gold and silver contracts are liquid immediately, like within the hour. And so anytime the markets go down in whatever area and gold and silver go down with it, it's because they're what everybody sells first to cover their margin calls with. And that's because gold and silver is the only thing that you can sell and get cash to cover your margins in time, because you have to come up with that like right away. I don't know. I'm not into this. Is what I've been told. So this is all what I've been told. But the thing about the liquidity of the gold and silver paper is true, that it is more liquid than other paper assets, meaning you can sell it right away and get your cash faster than you can from other paper. So that's why you're always going to see that fall whenever the market falls, because people are always doing that. But again, that's the paper gold and silver, which gives the illusion of it being, oh, well, it sells off when we're talking paper. That happens always so fast that in the physical you won't get those moves like that. But that's part of the deceptive process there. Vegas Stacker stopped in. Oh, Dub C stopped in. Good to see you guys. You can get rich off penny stocks. Yes, indeed. If you know what you're doing. You can get rich from sports bets. Yep. You can get rich playing the lotto, but those are pretty not good odds there. 888. Yeah, Dub C says he's got minor exposure to Bitcoin, but it's a fraction of my physical PMs. And that, I was saying that earlier too, that, you know, if you have a lot of silver and gold or really nice coins, if you guys don't know Dub C Coins and Precious Metals, go check out his channel. Let me put it up so you. Dub C's Coins and Precious Metals. He has a great channel. This guy knows more about silver and gold and coinage and mintages and rarities and unique stuff. He's awesome to listen to if you're into gold and silver. Go check him out. But he points out that he has a minor exposure to Bitcoin, but it's a fraction of his physical PMs. And that's what I was saying. If you got a lot of silver and gold, then you know you've got your base value covered. You have your doomsday wealth covered, so that you can't just lose all your value because someone shuts something off or changes a code, or you can't just lose because you have your insurance taken care of. Then it's much easier for you to dabble in whatever investment it might be, right? Because then you have your safety already covered, and then the risk reward safety bracketry that you need to look at is gets adjusted a lot, right? So then you can take much more risk, because even if you lose all of it that you're putting in there, you have your essential value already taken care of that can't be taken away from you. So that gives you much more leverage to play in whatever market you want to play in without worrying about it, for sure. Silverboy Blues was in here. Thanks for stopping in. Almost has been slave to life. Make you weak. Yeah, that's it. And that's kind of the thing, is that money is never everything, right? This is just a part of reality. It's just a part of reality that might make your life a little bit better, depending on how you handle it and at what level you put it on your list. You never want it to be the most important thing, that you're going to do anything to get that. That causes you to do things that are usually not smart at all, and it usually doesn't even get you rich. So you got to be careful there. But like Silverboy Blues says, almost as bad as becoming enslaved to a wife who would seek to make you weak and clingy and give her power and control over you. And that is indeed the case, and I'm sorry that you have such vivid knowledge on that. Very true. Space Miner says he was scammed early days for a good chunk of money, and it was pretty disappointing to himself, I can imagine. Yeah, 888 says, yeah, people with gambling probably do that. Bet more to make up what they lost. Yeah, that's a scary treadmill to be on. Isn't there a guy who forgot password and has 1 million in Bitcoin? So there was lots of that. There's lots of lost Bitcoin in those comment sections. Lots of lost Bitcoin. There's stolen Bitcoin. There's misplaced wallets and keys, and like there's got to and people who just have a lot of Bitcoin and then forget their password. It's just a nightmare. There is a lot of crypto out there that is missing. A valuable nothing that is lost into nothingness. And again, that's something that just would irk me anyway, is the whole that it is really nothing anyway. That just bothers me. I mean, I understand. Yeah, I don't even want to go down that. Yeah. OC says that his issue with Trump trying to lower interest rate is putting lipstick on a pig. That's to say the very least. Indeed, yeah. It's devaluing our dollar faster than it's already being devalued. All right, cool guys. Well, I just wanted to go over a couple of those things, and hope you guys are having a good night. I will be back tomorrow night with the Spin and Bin, and be back with more shortly after that for sure. And yeah, appreciate you all for hanging out with me here. And we will catch you all hopefully tomorrow night and then shortly thereafter next week. So appreciate y'all for hanging out, and we will catch you on the next one. Thanks, guys.